Alexander Grant stood in front of the full-length mirror, his sharp gray suit flawless, his reflection pristine. The skyline of Manhattan glittered behind him through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse, a palace in the clouds perched above the restless heartbeat of the city. His world was polished, calculated, perfectly orchestrated. Yet tonight, as he adjusted his cufflinks with practiced precision, a whisper of unease curled in his chest. He knew it was ridiculous. He had everything. At 42, Alex Grant was the CEO of Grant Tech, a global powerhouse reshaping industries from artificial intelligence to renewable energy. His name graced Forbes covers. His face appeared on news tickers. People didn't just admire him, they envied him. He owned 5 homes across the world, a private jet, cars collectors salivated over. And in 2 days, he'd marry Grace Sinclair, heiress to the Sinclair Hotel empire, a union the business pages were calling the wedding of the year. So why did he feel hollow? Alex ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair and let his gaze drift across the penthouse. Sleek black and chrome furnishings, curated art on pristine walls, a kitchen gleaming with appliances he never used. There was no clutter, no signs of life, only the quiet hum of climate control and the occasional buzz of his phone. He'd chosen this life. He had chased it, shaped it, conquered it. And yet, as the night deepened, his thoughts wandered somewhere they shouldn't, to a memory, a face, a name. Sophia. He clenched his jaw. It had been over a decade, and still, her name could make his chest tighten. She was the one crack in his perfectly structured world, the unfinished chapter he had buried under boardrooms, mergers, and private equity deals. He told himself it hadn't mattered when she left, that she'd been a distraction, that he'd become stronger, sharper, better without her. But tonight, with the wedding looming, the memory resurfaced. He crossed to the sideboard and poured himself a glass of scotch, swirling the amber liquid as city lights flickered below. His assistant, Mark Bishop, had called earlier, offering congratulations and asking again if Alex was sure. Sure about Grace, sure about the marriage, sure about the future. Mark had been his friend since college, one of the few people who dared push past Alex's steely surface. "It's the right move," Alex had said, his voice as cool and unshakable as ever. "For both of us." But after the call ended, Alex had sat in silence, staring out at the skyline, feeling something he couldn't quite name, anticipation laced with dread. He didn't love Grace. She was beautiful, poised, and her family's empire complemented his own. They fit on paper. Their relationship was a transaction, a merger dressed in romance, and they both understood the stakes. Love, Alex had long ago decided, was an illusion, a risk not worth the fall. Yet despite all his careful planning, one detail gnawed at him. Sophia Morales. She had been the last real thing in his life before he became Alex Grant, billionaire magnate. They had met when she was an architecture student, working part-time in his father's development firm. She had challenged him, laughed with him, softened his edges. And then one day, she was gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just an empty apartment and a note that never came. He had buried the wound under layers of work, success, and ambition. But as he prepared to take this next step, to cement his legacy with Grace and merge 2 dynasties, he found himself circling back, drawn to a single bitter thought. He wanted Sophia to see what she had walked away from. He wanted her to sit among the guests at his wedding, surrounded by glittering lights and silk gowns and billion-dollar deals, and realize she had missed her chance, that he had become everything she once believed he could be, and more. With a slow, measured breath, Alex reached for the ornate cream envelope sitting on his desk. Inside was the invitation, personally addressed to Sofia Morales. He had tracked her down with the same precision he used to negotiate contracts or acquire competitors. A quiet little design firm in Queens. No husband, no public relationships. She would come, he was certain. She would sit in the back, perhaps, dressed modestly, eyes wide as she took in the spectacle. And when their eyes met, she would know. He drained his glass, the scotch burning a slow trail down his throat. In the silence, the old ache stirred again, the one that whispered late at night when the city quieted and there was no one left to impress. For a moment, he allowed the memory to surface. Her laugh, the way she used to touch his face when she thought he was asleep, the warmth she brought into the cold rooms of his life. But just as quickly, he shut the door. He was Alex Grant. He had everything. Tomorrow, he would show the world. And he would show Sofia. As the night deepened over Manhattan, Alex stood alone in his tower, the city stretching endlessly beneath him, a man surrounded by power, wealth, and success, yet quietly haunted by the one thing he could never quite conquer, the past. Sofia Morales let out a long breath as she pressed her forehead to the cool kitchen cabinet, the soft hum of the dishwasher filling the small space. The scent of simmering tomato sauce clung to the air, and somewhere in the next room, the sound of laughter floated from the television. Her boys were piled on the worn sectional, a tangle of limbs and matching dark curls, shouting at a cartoon villain on the screen. Luis, the bold one, always the first to leap to defend the underdog. Mateo, thoughtful and cautious, frowning as he followed every plot twist. Julian, the sensitive peacemaker, squeezed between his brothers, and Raphael, the quiet observer, perched at the edge, soaking it all in with his wide, watchful eyes. Sofia smiled despite herself. They were her world. She turned her attention back to the envelope on the table. Creamy, elegant, impossibly expensive. Her name, handwritten in looping script, stared up at her like a challenge, a wedding invitation to Alex Grant's wedding. She sank into the kitchen chair, her hand trembling slightly as she picked up the card again. She hadn't seen his name in years, not since the tabloids had plastered his rise to tech stardom across every business and society page. She had tried not to look. Not because she hated him, but because seeing his face still stirred something raw inside her, a hollow ache she'd never quite managed to fill. "What's that, Mom?" Luis appeared in the doorway, his eyes sharp with curiosity. "Nothing, mijo," she murmured, folding the invitation shut. But Luis had inherited her determination and Alex's piercing gaze. "Is it from Dad?" The word hit her like a slap. She hadn't told them much, only that their father was someone from her past, someone who didn't know about them. But now, as she looked at her son, his chin tilted defiantly, just like Alex used to do, Sofia realized the truth could no longer wait. She took a breath. "Come here, all of you." Soon, 4 sets of eyes stared back at her, perched around the small kitchen table. She reached out and touched Luis's hand, then Mateo's shoulder, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her chest. "I need to tell you something," she began softly, "about your father." By the time she had finished, the boys sat wide-eyed, exchanging glances. Luis was the first to speak. "So, he doesn't know about us?" "No," Sofia admitted, feeling the sharp sting of guilt. "He never knew." Mateo furrowed his brow. "Why didn't you tell him?" "I tried, sweetheart," she whispered, "but things happened. People got in the way. And by the time I could—" It felt too late. Julian chewed his lip nervously. "Are we going to meet him?" Sofia exhaled, her heart pounding. She thought of the towering skyscraper where Alex probably lived, the sleek cars, the glittering parties. Their lives couldn't be more different, and yet— "We've been invited to his wedding," she said carefully. "I think it's time you met him." Later that night, as the boys slept in a heap on the couch, Sophia stood by the window, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The city stretched out in front of her, lights and sounds, life moving on, indifferent to her little corner of it. Her sister Carmen appeared beside her, holding 2 mugs of tea. "You sure about this?" Carmen asked gently, handing over a mug. Sophia gave a weak smile. "Not even a little." Carmen leaned against the window. "You know what they say, right? Old wounds don't heal until you open them back up." "I'm not sure I want to open this one," Sophia murmured. "You don't have to do it for you," Carmen said softly. "Do it for them. They deserve to know." Sophia closed her eyes, pressing her forehead to the glass. She remembered Alex as he had been, ambitious, restless, hungry to prove himself. He had dreams too big for their tiny apartment, for late-night takeout and long walks through the park. She remembered his laughter, his fierce protectiveness, the way he had kissed her like she was the only person in the world, and she remembered the day everything shattered. "I'm not going to the wedding to stir up drama," Sophia whispered. I want him to know they exist, even if it's the last thing I ever do." Carmen squeezed her arm. "Then you walk in there with your head high, sister." Not as some woman from his past, as the mother of his children. Sophia let out a shaky laugh. "No pressure, right?" Carmen smiled. "We Morales women were born for pressure." Outside, the city pulsed and shimmered, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing in one small apartment. Sophia placed a hand on the window, steadying herself. The past was about to collide with the present. And none of their lives would ever be the same again. Alex Grant stood in his office, staring out over the Manhattan skyline as dawn crept across the horizon, softening the edges of the skyscrapers with a golden glow. His hands were shoved deep in his pockets, his jaw tight. He hadn't slept. The invitation had been sent, the wedding was 2 days away, and the press was already circling like sharks, eager for the spectacle. But it wasn't the press or the stockholders or even the thought of Grace Sinclair that kept him awake. It was her. Sophia. Mark Bishop arrived early as usual. Alex's best friend, his lawyer, his anchor through 2 decades of chaos. Mark let himself in, knowing Alex rarely locked his private office. "You look like hell," Mark said lightly, setting down 2 coffees. "Good morning to you too." Alex didn't turn around. Mark studied his friend for a long beat. "You sure you want to do this?" "Invite Sophia." Alex finally faced him. "It's just a courtesy invite." Mark raised a brow. "You don't do anything out of courtesy." "Not unless it's strategic." Alex sat, running a hand through his hair. "I need her to see what she walked away from, what she left behind." Mark pulled up a chair. "You ever stop to think maybe you were the one left behind?" Alex stiffened. "She disappeared, Mark. No warning, no explanation. That was 10 years ago." Mark leaned forward. "You built an empire. You have everything. But you still can't let her go." Alex shot him a sharp look. "This has nothing to do with her. This is about closing the chapter." Mark gave a small, tired smile. "If you say so, Alex." Across the city, Sophia stood in front of the mirror in her modest bedroom, smoothing the front of her simple navy dress. She barely recognized the woman staring back, older, wiser, with faint lines at the corners of her eyes, but still holding the same determined spark. Carmen peeked in. "You look stunning." Sophia laughed softly. "In this, Carmen, we're walking into a billionaire's wedding. I don't exactly have a ball gown hanging in the closet." Carmen came to stand beside her, draping an arm around her shoulder. "You don't need one. You have something better." "What's that?" Sophia asked, skeptical. "4 boys who love you more than life itself." Carmen smiled warmly. "And a heart that has survived everything." Sophia closed her eyes for a moment, drawing strength from her sister's words. She had no idea what would happen today. She only knew she had to walk in with her head high, not for herself, but for her sons. "Okay," she whispered, turning. "Let's do this." Back at Alex's penthouse, Grace Sinclair descended the marble staircase, a vision in silk and diamonds. She crossed the room with elegant precision, kissing Alex lightly on the cheek. "The florist just called," Grace said, her voice smooth but clipped. "There was a mix-up with the orchids." "Handle it," Alex murmured distractedly, glancing at his phone. Grace paused, studying him. "Is everything okay?" He forced a smile. "Fine, just business." Grace let it go, but her eyes lingered on him as she moved away. She wasn't blind. She saw the distance. But she had her own reasons for holding on. Reasons rooted in family legacy, in reputation, in ambition. Love was a luxury neither of them had ever really prioritized. As she disappeared into the next room, Alex's phone buzzed. A notification popped up. "Sofia Morales, RSVP, confirmed." Alex's pulse jumped. He clenched the phone tightly, exhaling slowly. It was happening. Sofia and Carmen climbed into the hired car, the boys packed in the back, fidgeting in their little suits. Luis grinned. Mateo adjusted his tie nervously. Julian hugged his stuffed bear, and Raphael peered silently out the window, wide-eyed. "Are you sure we should go?" Mateo asked softly, voice edged with worry. Sofia reached back, smoothing his hair. "I'm sure, baby," Luis beamed. "I want to meet Dad. I want to see if he looks like me." Sofia chuckled, her heart aching a little. "You all look like him." The car wove through the bustling streets, heading toward the glittering venue where two worlds were about to collide. As they neared the towering glass building, Sofia felt her chest tighten. She braced herself, reminding herself why she was doing this. Not to stir up trouble, not to beg for anything, just to tell the truth. The driver pulled up to the curb. Sofia helped each boy out, straightening ties and smoothing little jackets. She felt the eyes of passing guests, the flashes of curiosity, the undercurrent of gossip. Carmen squeezed her hand. "Ready?" Sofia lifted her chin. "Let's go meet their father." The grand entrance hall sparkled with crystal chandeliers and sleek white marble, a stage designed for perfection. Everywhere Sofia looked, there were gilded details, champagne towers, impossibly tall floral arrangements, waiters gliding past in crisp black uniforms. She paused just inside the doorway, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes. She squeezed Carmen's hand as her boys tugged nervously at her dress. "Mama, are we in the right place?" Julian whispered, eyes wide. "We're right where we need to be," Sofia whispered back, straightening his little bow tie. A hush rippled through the crowd. Alex turned just in time to see them step in, and for a heartbeat, his world tilted. Sofia. Her dark hair was swept back in a soft knot, a navy dress hugging her figure with quiet elegance. But it wasn't just her that made his heart jolt. It was the four boys flanking her. Boys with unmistakable features, his green eyes, his stubborn chin, his restless energy. His chest tightened, his breath caught. Mark appeared at his elbow. "That who I think it is?" he murmured. Alex didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the boys. Grace moved toward him, her delicate hand brushing his arm. "Alex, what is it?" she asked, voice laced with confusion. He pulled away without thinking, stepping forward, closing the space between them. "Sofia," he said quietly, standing just a few feet away now. "You came." Her chin lifted slightly. "I told you I would." He tore his gaze away from her long enough to study the children. "Are they?" Sofia gave a small, trembling nod. "Yes, Alex. They're yours." Time seemed to slow. The sound of clinking glasses, polite laughter, murmured conversation. It all faded into a heavy, pressing silence. Luis, always the boldest, stepped forward. "Are you really our dad?" Alex felt something crack inside him. He lowered himself to the boy's eye level, studying the curious, determined face that mirrored his own. "I didn't know," he said softly. "I swear to you, I didn't know." Luis frowned slightly. Why not? It's complicated, Alex whispered, his voice thick with something he hadn't let himself feel in years. Behind him, Grace's expression hardened. The crowd had begun to murmur, heads turning, whispers blooming like wildfire. Alex, what is going on? Grace demanded, her voice sharp now, cutting through the tension. Sophia's shoulders tensed. Carmen reached for her arm, murmuring, "Maybe we should go." But Alex shook his head, rising to his full height. "No." "Don't go." He turned, facing the room, facing Grace. "These are my children," he said, the words tasting both foreign and deeply familiar on his tongue. Grace's face paled. "You're telling me you have 4 illegitimate children, and you didn't think to mention that?" "I didn't know," Alex repeated, his voice firm. "Not until now." The room buzzed with shock, the hum of disbelief, judgment, scandal. Sophia's hands trembled, but she straightened her spine. She had come for her sons, not for a fight. She met Grace's furious gaze without flinching. "We can talk about this later," Sophia said quietly, turning to gather her boys. "We didn't mean to interrupt your day." Alex reached for her arm, his grip gentle but insistent. "Please, Sophia, stay." "I need to understand. I need to know everything." Grace's eyes flashed. "What are you saying, Alex?" Alex exhaled shakily. For the first time in years, his world wasn't ruled by contracts or numbers or careful plans. It was ruled by the raw, aching pull of something real. "I'm saying I need to talk to the mother of my children," Sophia's breath caught. Carmen whispered, "Soph, are you okay?" "I don't know," Sophia whispered back. The boys huddled close to her, wide-eyed, feeling the tension but not yet understanding the stakes. Alex turned to Grace. "I'm sorry." Grace let out a sharp laugh, brittle and bright. "You're sorry?" she hissed. "You just humiliated me in front of everyone." "Grace," Alex said quietly, "I never wanted to hurt you. But I can't ignore this." The room watched, rapt, as Grace's composure splintered. She lifted her chin, her voice cold as steel. "Then it seems we have nothing more to discuss." She turned sharply, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Alex standing in the center of his own glittering empire, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath him. Slowly, he turned back to Sophia. "Please," he said, his voice rough, "don't leave yet." "Not again." Sophia studied him, heart hammering in her chest. She had no idea what came next. Neither did he. Sophia sat stiffly in one of the side rooms of the opulent venue, her boys clustered around her. Carmen paced nearby, glancing nervously at the door. The sounds of the wedding reception floated faintly through the walls. Laughter, music, the clink of crystal glasses. But in here, time had slowed to a heavy, anxious crawl. Luis tugged on Sophia's sleeve. "Is he coming back?" Sophia smoothed his hair, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "I don't know, sweetheart." "Let's just wait." The door opened quietly, and Alex stepped in, his expression uncharacteristically uncertain. Behind him, Mark gave a subtle nod, then quietly closed the door to give them privacy. For a moment, Alex simply stood there, taking them in. His sons, it still didn't feel real. He cleared his throat. "Thank you for staying." Sophia rose slowly, folding her arms over her chest. "This wasn't how I wanted you to find out, Alex." His eyes darkened. "Then how did you want me to find out? 10 years later, at my wedding?" The sharpness in his voice made the boys flinch. Sophia shot him a warning glance, her protective instincts flaring. "I tried," she said quietly. "I tried to tell you. But your father, he made sure I couldn't reach you." Alex's brows knitted. "My father? He came to me," Sophia said, her voice trembling slightly. "He offered me money to disappear. He told me you wanted nothing to do with me or any children." Alex's breath caught. "He did what?" Sophia looked away. I didn't take the money, but I left because I believed him. And by the time I realized the truth, you were already building your empire. You were already gone. Alex ran a hand through his hair, pacing. His mind reeled. His father had always been ruthless, but this was betrayal on a level he hadn't imagined. "Why didn't you fight harder?" he demanded, his voice raw. "Why didn't you come back? Find me?" Sophia's eyes flashed. "Because I was 29, working 2 jobs, and pregnant with 4 babies. I barely had time to sleep, let alone chase a man who I thought didn't want me." The room fell into a taut silence. Luis looked between them, his little brow furrowed. "Are you two gonna fight?" Sophia knelt, pulling her boys close. "No, mijo. We are not here to fight." Alex crouched down, eye level with them. He saw himself reflected in each face: Luis's fire, Mateo's quiet thoughtfulness, Julian's sweetness, Raphael's silent watchfulness. His chest tightened. "I didn't know about you," he said softly. "If I had, things would have been different." Luis studied him with a seriousness that belied his 9 years. "You left Mom." "No," Alex whispered. "I didn't know she was carrying you." Julian clutched his bear tighter. "Are you mad at us?" Alex felt his throat close. "No," he said hoarsely. "No, sweetheart. Never." He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as he brushed Julian's hair back. The boy startled slightly at the unfamiliar touch, but didn't pull away. Sophia watched, her heart aching. She had prepared herself for anger, resentment, maybe even legal threats. She hadn't prepared for this, the raw, naked vulnerability in Alex's eyes as he reached for the family he never knew he had. Carmen cleared her throat. "We should probably go." "The boys are tired." Alex straightened slowly. "Please, can I see you again? Can we talk?" Sophia hesitated, her wall still high, her heart still bruised. But when she looked at her sons, at the way Luis's eyes lit up, at Mateo's shy glance, at Julian's hopeful smile, at Raphael's quiet gaze, she knew she couldn't shut the door. "We'll talk," she said softly, "but not here." "Not tonight." Alex nodded. "Tomorrow. Come to my apartment." "I'll clear my schedule." Sophia gave a small, tired smile. "All right, Alex. Tomorrow." As they gathered their things, Alex watched them go, his heart heavy, his mind spinning. The wedding, the merger, the carefully constructed future he'd mapped out, all of it had been built on a foundation that now felt suddenly, terrifyingly fragile. And yet, as the door closed behind Sophia and the boys, Alex felt something stir deep inside him. Hope. Alex stood in front of the tall windows of his penthouse, staring out over the city as dawn broke, casting soft gold over the steel and glass towers. His reflection stared back at him in the window, a man who should have been celebrating his wedding, but was instead untangling a past that had blindsided him. He barely slept. The boys' faces kept flashing through his mind. Luis's stubborn glare, Mateo's guarded eyes, Julian's sweet uncertainty, Raphael's quiet observance. They were his sons. 4 little lives he'd missed, 4 little lives he wanted, no, needed to know. But it wasn't just about the boys. It was about Sophia. She had appeared like a ghost from a life he had sealed off, a life he thought he had outgrown. But one look at her, and he felt like the man he used to be, before the boardrooms and acquisitions, before he learned to harden himself against loss. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Mark stepped into the room, 2 coffees in hand. He set one down and leaned against the edge of the desk. "You okay?" Mark asked quietly. Alex let out a breath. "What do you think?" Mark gave a small smile. "I think you're about to find out who you are when the business headlines aren't writing your story anymore." Alex turned, frowning. "What does that mean?" "It means you can't approach this like a merger, Alex," Mark said gently. "This is about people. A woman you hurt, kids you've never met. You can't just throw money at it or negotiate terms. You have to show up. And you have to stay." Alex rubbed his face. "I don't even know how to start." "Start by listening," Mark said simply. "Not fixing. Not controlling. Listening." Later that afternoon, Sophia stood on the sidewalk in front of Alex's building, the boys fidgeting beside her. The towering glass facade shimmered in the sunlight, reflecting a world so far removed from their everyday life, it might as well have been another planet. Luis whistled low. "Mom? Are you sure we're allowed in there?" Sophia gave a soft laugh, smoothing his hair. "We have an invitation, don't we?" Raphael tugged at her hand. "Are we going to live here now?" Sophia crouched to his level, her heart aching. "No, baby. We're just here to talk." That's all. The doorman greeted them politely, ushering them into a private elevator that swept them up to the top floor. Sophia's stomach fluttered as they rose higher and higher, the city falling away beneath them. When the doors opened, Alex was waiting. He had changed into a soft grey sweater and jeans, a stark contrast to the polished businessman they had seen at the wedding. He offered a tentative smile, his eyes flicking from Sophia to the boys. "Hi," he said quietly. "Come on in." The boys piled into the penthouse, wide-eyed. Luis raced to the window, pressing his hands to the glass. Mateo examined the shelves of books. Julian clutched his bear tightly, and Raphael drifted silently behind, taking it all in. Alex watched them, his chest tightening. How had he missed all this? Sophia stood near the door, arms crossed. She looked tired, wary. "Can I get you something?" Alex offered. "Water? Juice?" "We're fine," Sophia said softly. Alex exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Sophia, I don't know where to start. I know I can't make up for the time we lost, but I want to try. I want to know them. I want to know you again." Sophia's gaze softened, just for a moment, before she steeled herself. "Alex, this can't be about you making yourself feel better. It has to be about them. They come first, always." He nodded, humbled. "I understand. I want to do right by them, and by you." Luis piped up from across the room. "Do you have video games?" Alex let out a surprised laugh. "Not yet, but I can get some." Julian, shyly clutching his bear, edged closer. "Do you have snacks?" "Definitely have snacks," Alex smiled, guiding them toward the kitchen. As the boys explored, Sophia watched from a distance, her chest tightening. She saw Alex crouch to Mateo's level, explaining how the elevator worked, saw Raphael silently slip his small hand into Alex's for a moment, before darting away. She took a slow breath. She hadn't come here to start over. But maybe, just maybe, that's what was happening. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, she was ready to let it. Sophia sat on the edge of the plush sofa, watching as Alex fumbled with a tray of snacks in the kitchen. The boys had quickly taken over the living room, scattering across the massive sectional and floor, giggling as they played an impromptu game of charades. The sounds of their laughter filled the penthouse, echoing off sleek marble and glass. a warmth the space had likely never known. Carmen, seated beside Sophia, gave her a sideways glance. He's different than I expected. Sophia let out a breath, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. Yeah, me too, Alex returned, balancing a tray of juice boxes and bowls of pretzels. Sorry, he said with a sheepish smile. I don't usually have little visitors. Luis grinned, grabbing a juice box. You should get a dog. Alex chuckled. A dog, huh? That might be a good idea. Sophia watched him quietly, her chest tightening. He was trying, awkward, uncertain, but genuinely trying. And that was something she hadn't expected. Mark arrived a little later, stepping carefully into the chaos. Alex, I just wanted to check. He stopped short, eyebrows lifting at the sight of 4 boys sprawled across the floor. Alex gave a small, embarrassed laugh. Mark, meet Luis, Mateo, Julian, and Raphael. My sons. Mark's eyes widened slightly. Wow, that's sudden. Sophia stood, extending a hand. I'm Sophia. We've met before, but it was years ago. Mark shook her hand, a flicker of surprise and sympathy crossing his face. Good to meet you again. Carmen joined them, arms folded with a knowing smile. I'm Carmen, Sophia's sister. Resident truth-teller. Alex glanced between them, sensing the undercurrent of protectiveness. He cleared his throat. I want to take you all to dinner tomorrow. Somewhere nice, just us. No press, no outsiders. Sophia hesitated. Alex, please, he said softly. Let me have this time. Let me get to know them. She searched his face, the old walls rising instinctively. But then she saw the way he looked at the boys, at Luis's exuberance, at Mateo's quiet intensity, at Julian's shy smiles, at Raphael's thoughtful eyes, and something in her softened. All right, she murmured. Dinner, but low-key, no grand gestures. Alex smiled, relief washing over him. Low-key, I promise. Later that evening, after the boys had been wrangled back into their coats and shoes, Sophia lingered near the door. Alex stood beside her, hands in his pockets, a quiet tension humming between them. Thank you for coming, he said softly. I know this is a lot. She gave a small, tired smile. That's an understatement. He hesitated. Sophia, can I ask you something? She met his gaze warily. What is it? Why did you really stay away? He asked, his voice low. Even after my father interfered, after everything, why didn't you fight harder to tell me? Sophia's chest tightened. You want the truth? I was scared. Scared you'd think I was chasing you for money. Scared you'd think I'd planned it, or worse, that I'd ruined your life. I told myself you were better off without the baggage. Alex's brow furrowed. Sophia, you were never baggage. Her eyes glistened. You didn't know me back then. Not really. And I didn't know how to fit into your world. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. You still don't get it, do you? You were the only thing that ever felt real. For a beat, neither of them spoke, the air charged with old wounds and fragile hopes. We'll see you tomorrow, Sophia whispered, gently touching his arm before slipping out the door. Alex stood there long after they were gone, the apartment suddenly too quiet, too big, too empty. Mark appeared at his side, his expression thoughtful. You realize this changes everything, right? Alex nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. And for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he was terrified or grateful. The following evening, Alex waited at the corner table of a small, tucked-away restaurant in the West Village, one of the few places where he knew the owner well enough to guarantee privacy. The flicker of candlelight on the table felt intimate, almost too intimate, considering the gravity of what tonight meant. He ran a hand over his face, exhaling slowly. He had spent the day ignoring calls from Grace's family, from investors, from the media already sniffing around the broken engagement. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight, it was just Sophia and the boys. The door chimed softly, and Alex looked up sharply, his chest tightening. Sophia entered, holding Julian's hand. Carmen followed with Luis and Mateo, while Raphael clung shyly to Sophia's coat. Sophia had dressed simply but elegantly. Dark jeans, a soft sweater, and a faint trace of makeup that made Alex's throat tighten unexpectedly. "Hi," she said quietly as they approached. Alex stood smiling. "Hi, thank you for coming." The boys scrambled into the chairs, immediately setting into playful chatter and laughter. Luis examined the menu like a detective. Mateo quietly traced the patterns on the table. Julian clutched his ever-present bear, and Raphael peeked at Alex with wide, uncertain eyes. Alex leaned forward. "I thought we could just relax tonight. Nothing fancy." Sophia gave a soft, amused smile. "You realize this is still the fanciest place they've ever eaten, right?" Alex laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "I'll work on toning it down." As the evening unfolded, something unexpected happened. They laughed. They shared stories. Alex found himself pulled into the orbit of these four little boys who looked so much like him, yet had their own quirks, their own rhythms, their own ways of seeing the world. Luis proudly recounted how he had won the school spelling bee. Mateo shyly admitted he loved to draw buildings, just like his mom. Julian offered Alex a bite of his dessert with wide, trusting eyes. Raphael watched everything quietly, finally sliding his small hand onto Alex's knee under the table. Sophia watched all of it with a tight, tender ache in her chest. She had spent years preparing to raise these boys alone, hardening herself to the idea that they might never know their father. Now, sitting across from Alex, she saw flashes of the man she once loved. The charm, the warmth, the stubbornness, the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide. As the boys leaned against her, drowsy from dessert, Alex gently reached across the table. "Sophia," he said softly, "I want to help. I know I can't rewrite the past, but I want to be part of their future." "And yours." She stiffened slightly. "Alex, this isn't about fixing things with me. It's about them." "I know," he murmured. "But it's also about us. We have years to sort through, years of anger, years of silence. And I don't want to pretend they didn't happen. I want to understand. I want to rebuild." Her eyes glistened, but she shook her head gently. "Alex, don't promise things just because you feel guilty." "I'm not," he said quietly. "I'm promising because for the first time in years, I know what matters." Their gazes held for a long moment. Then the moment shattered, as his phone buzzed sharply on the table. Alex glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. Grace's family. Again, Sophia gave a rueful smile. "You should answer." Alex silenced the phone, his eyes never leaving hers. "No, not tonight." Outside, as they said their goodbyes, Alex crouched beside the boys, ruffling their hair, hugging each one carefully, uncertainly, but with growing ease. Julian yawned, resting his head on Alex's shoulder for a moment, before Carmen gently lifted him away. Sophia lingered by the curb, her arms wrapped around herself against the cool night air. Alex moved beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. "Thank you," he murmured, "for trusting me tonight." She smiled faintly. "We're just starting, Alex. There's a long road ahead." He nodded, his voice rough. "I'm ready." For the first time in a long, long while, Alex realized he wanted something not because it was a victory or a prize, but because it was home. As Sophia gathered the boys into a waiting cab, Alex stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching them disappear into the night. He knew the battles ahead wouldn't be easy. Grace's family, his own reputation, the corporate empire he had built, all of it was about to be tested. But none of it mattered compared to the quiet promise that had taken root in his heart. He wanted his family. And this time, he wouldn't let them slip away. Alex sat alone in his office, the city glowing beneath him like a scattered field of stars. His phone vibrated insistently on the desk, but he ignored it, staring blankly out the window. His mind wasn't on the crumbling merger deal or the angry messages piling up from Grace's family. It was on the look in Sophia's eyes when she told him they had a long road ahead, a road he knew would test every piece of him. He ran a hand through his hair, his chest tight. He had spent so long fighting to build something indestructible, only to realize he had been lonely inside his fortress. And now, with Sophia and the boys back in his life, the cracks were showing. Mark entered quietly, carrying a folder. "You're avoiding everyone," he said softly. "Grace's father called 3 times. Their lawyers are circling." Alex let out a heavy breath. "I don't care about the merger right now." Mark raised an eyebrow. "That merger is worth $500 million. "I know," Alex muttered. "But my sons are worth more." Mark sat across from him, watching carefully. "You sure you know what you're getting into? Because from where I sit, you're walking away from everything you've built." Alex shook his head. "I'm walking towards something better." Mark studied him for a long moment before giving a small, almost proud smile. "Then let's figure out how to keep you standing when the dust settles." Meanwhile, across the city, Sophia sat on the worn couch, the boys piled around her, half asleep. Carmen brought her a cup of tea, sinking into the chair beside her. "You okay?" Carmen asked softly. Sophia gave a small, tired laugh. "Define okay." Carmen smiled gently. "You know, I watched you survive these last 10 years, working late, raising 4 boys on your own, carrying so much weight. And now, he's here. It must feel like your whole world is tilting." Sophia exhaled, rubbing her temples. "It does, and I don't know how to trust it, Carmi." "I don't know how to trust him." Carmen reached over, squeezing her hand. "Maybe you don't have to trust him all at once. Maybe you just take it one step at a time." Sophia nodded, blinking back tears. "One step at a time." The next morning, Alex called Sophia early. "Can I take them for the day?" he asked, his voice hopeful. "I want to spend time with them, just me and the boys." Sophia hesitated. Her mother instinct bristled, the protective wall rising, but something in Alex's voice softened her. "All right," she said cautiously. "But I'll need to talk to them first. And Alex, be patient with them. They're still figuring you out." "I will," he promised quietly. "Thank you, Sophia." That afternoon, Alex took the boys to the Natural History Museum. He watched in quiet awe as they darted between exhibits, their excitement contagious. Luis dragged him to the dinosaur skeletons, eyes wide with wonder. Matteo lingered over the architectural models, asking thoughtful questions. Julian clung to his side, pointing out the animals in the dioramas, and Raphael, always the quietest, slipped his small hand into Alex's, a silent, powerful gesture. Alex felt something shift inside him. Not a business deal, not a strategic move. Something real, something raw. As they walked outside into the crisp afternoon air, Alex crouched to their level. "Hey guys," he said softly. "Can I tell you something?" 4 pairs of eyes turned to him. "I missed a lot of your life so far," he said, his voice thick. "But I want to be here now. I want to be your dad, if you'll let me." Luis grinned. "Does that mean we get to visit you every weekend?" Matteo smiled shyly. "Do you have Legos?" Julian hugged his bear tighter, nodding quietly. Raphael just slipped his arms around Alex's neck, holding on tight. Alex closed his eyes, holding his son close. He had no idea what the future held. He knew Grace's family would fight, that his reputation would take a hit, that the empire he'd built might never look the same. But right here, right now, none of that mattered. He had found something worth fighting for. And this time, he wasn't going to let it slip away. Alex sat on the edge of his bed that night, his elbows on his knees, head in his hands. The penthouse was quiet, dark, and for the first time in days, it didn't feel like a triumph or a fortress. It felt like a weight. His phone lit up again on the nightstand. Another message from Grace's father. "Alex, we need to talk. Alex, your silence is costing you everything." "Alex, don't be a fool." He let the screen go dark without responding. He'd spent the day with his sons, smiling, laughing, absorbing every moment of their little joys. But tonight, alone, the walls closed in. Was he really ready for this? He had always known how to navigate power, how to negotiate deals, how to charm investors. But this was uncharted territory. A relationship, a family, a second chance with a woman he'd never stopped loving, but never truly understood. A knock came at the door. Mark stepped in, his face lined with quiet concern. "You're pushing everyone away, Alex." Alex let out a dry laugh. "Not everyone." Mark crossed the room and sat beside him. "You're at a crossroads, man. Grace's family wants answers. Your board is restless. You're about to risk everything you've built." Alex looked up, his eyes tired but clear. "I know." "So why aren't you fighting back?" Mark asked quietly. Alex let out a slow breath. "Because for once, Mark, I'm fighting for something more important." Mark gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "All right, then let me help you prepare for the fallout." Across the city, Sophia tucked the boys into bed, kissing each forehead, smoothing tangled hair. As she moved quietly through the apartment, she found Carmen in the kitchen, leaning against the counter with a knowing smile. "You're thinking about him," Carmen teased. Sophia gave a small, tired laugh. "Of course I am. How could I not?" Carmen poured 2 mugs of tea, handing one over. "You always held back with him, you know." Even back then, Sophia leaned against the counter, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. He was always on a rocket ship to somewhere bigger, faster, shinier. I was afraid I'd hold him back. Carmen raised an eyebrow. "And now?" Sophia looked down, her voice soft. "Now, I see a man trying to come home, and I don't know if I can let myself believe it." Carmen touched her arm gently. "Maybe it's not about believing it all at once. Maybe it's about seeing what he does next." The next morning, Alex stood in front of the mirror, straightening his shirt, his heart pounding. He was meeting Sophia today. Not the boys, not Carmen, just Sophia. He needed to tell her everything. He arrived at the small cafe near Sophia's apartment, spotting her by the window. She looked up as he entered, her expression cautious but open. "Hey," Alex said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey," Sophia echoed, her fingers curling around her coffee cup. For a long moment, they just sat there, the noise of the cafe swirling around them, neither sure where to begin. Finally, Alex broke the silence. "I have to tell you something." Sophia's brow furrowed. "What is it?" He took a breath. "Grace's family. They're threatening everything. The merger, the board, the investors. They want me to walk away from you, from the boys, to keep the deal intact." Sophia's face tightened. "And what are you going to do?" Alex met her gaze steadily. "I'm going to walk away from them." Her breath caught. "Alex, are you sure? That's your entire empire." He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "I've built a lot of things in my life, Sophia. Companies, deals, fortunes. But none of it matters if I lose you, if I lose them." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. She had waited so long for these words, and yet hearing them now, they scared her more than she expected. "Alex," she whispered, "you don't have to choose right now. Just show up. Be here." One day at a time. He gave a soft, broken laugh. "I can do that. I want to do that." As they sat there, hands intertwined, the noise of the world faded away. For the first time in years, they weren't fighting each other, or fate, or fear. They were simply two people trying to find their way back to each other. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to begin. Alex sat alone in his mother's townhouse, a place he rarely visited, a relic from his childhood that still smelled faintly of old books and jasmine. Rachel Grant, elegant as ever in a soft cashmere wrap, poured him tea from a delicate porcelain pot, a ritual that felt strange after the storm he was caught in. "Mother," Alex began cautiously, "there's something I need to ask you." Rachel lifted a brow, her eyes sharp. "You've had quite a week, Alexander." He ran a hand through his hair, sighing. "Did you know? Did you know Father paid Sophia to disappear?" Rachel stilled. For a moment she said nothing, but her fingers tightened slightly around the handle of the teacup. "I suspected," she finally whispered. "But your father, he was a man you didn't challenge lightly." Alex felt his stomach twist. "You knew I had children out there, and you stayed silent?" Rachel's eyes glistened, but she held his gaze. "I didn't know about the children. I only knew Sophia had vanished. Your father told me it was for your protection, that she was after your money, that she wasn't strong enough for this life." She drew in a shaky breath. "I believed him. I was wrong." Alex pressed a hand to his forehead, torn between anger and grief. "I could have had 10 years with them, Mother. With her. And I lost all of it." Rachel reached across the table, placing a trembling hand on his. "Then don't waste another minute." Meanwhile, Sophia sat on the floor of her apartment, surrounded by laundry baskets, folding tiny socks and school uniforms. Her mind kept drifting back to Alex, the raw honesty in his eyes, the way he had told her he would walk away from his empire if it meant keeping his family. Carmen entered, plopping onto the couch. "You're quiet." Sophia gave a wry smile. "I'm thinking," Carmen smirked. "About Alex." Sophia sighed. About everything. How do you open your heart again after years of protecting it? Carmen softened, leaning forward. You don't have to fling it wide open, Sophie. You just crack the door a little. Sophia gave a soft laugh. Crack the door, huh? Yeah, Carmen grinned, and let him do the work to push it open. That night, Alex called Sophia. Can you come over? He asked, his voice low. I need to tell you something important. Sophia hesitated. Alex, is everything okay? No, he whispered, but it will be. Sophia arrived at the penthouse an hour later, Carmen watching the boys at home. She stepped inside cautiously, her heart hammering as she took in the view, the silent opulence, the man waiting nervously by the window. Alex turned, his face pale but determined. There's something I need to show you. He handed her a folder. Inside were documents, inheritance records, shares, trust details, showing that Alex's late father had not only manipulated Sophia, but had tried to keep Alex under his thumb financially, even from the grave. He controlled everything, Alex murmured. Even now the board thinks they can use my father's wishes to pressure me, but I'm done letting him control my life. Sophia's fingers trembled on the papers. Alex, this is huge. He reached for her hands, holding them tightly. I'm fighting back, not just for me. For you, for the boys, for the life I should have had, the one I want now. Sophia's breath hitched. She saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear, the fierce determination. I don't know if I can promise everything will be perfect, Alex whispered. But I can promise you this. I'm not running away. Not again. Sophia closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them slowly, meeting his gaze. Okay, she whispered. One step at a time. And for the first time since they had been torn apart, they stood together, not as two people fighting the past, but as two people ready to face the future. Alex exhaled shakily, his hands tightening around hers. I've missed you every day, Sophia, even when I convinced myself I didn't. Sophia smiled softly, blinking back tears. I missed you too, Alex. He pulled her into a gentle embrace, resting his forehead against hers. Outside, the city shimmered with its usual restless energy, but inside, the quiet moment between them pulsed with something new. Hope. Alex barely slept that night. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling as the weight of it all pressed down. The boys' faces, Sophia's trembling hands, the looming threat from his father's old allies. But as dawn broke, a strange peace settled over him. For the first time in years, he wasn't focused on his empire or his reputation. He was focused on something real. By midday, his office was a war zone. His board members sat around the massive table, voices raised, tempers flaring. Alex, this scandal is dragging the company through the mud. The Sinclair merger is dead in the water. Grace's family wants out. We need you to issue a statement, distance yourself, and refocus. Alex stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, his face unreadable. Mark, sitting at his side, gave him a subtle nod. It was time. Alex took a slow breath and let his gaze sweep the room. Gentlemen, I know what you want. But I'm not going to do it. The room fell into shocked silence. What are you saying? One executive barked. I'm saying, Alex said calmly, that I'm done living under my father's shadow. I'm done making decisions based on mergers and boardroom politics. I have 4 sons I never knew existed, a woman I hurt deeply, and I'm choosing them. His voice softened slightly. If that costs me everything else, so be it. There was a beat of stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. Mark rose smoothly, cutting through the noise. If anyone here thinks Alex Grant can't rebuild his empire without you, I suggest you reconsider. But if you want to walk out that door, you're welcome to. One by one, the executives faltered. They had underestimated Alex before. They wouldn't do it again. Meanwhile, Sophia sat on a park bench, watching the boys race across the playground, their laughter ringing out in the crisp autumn air. Carmen sat beside her, sipping coffee. "You okay?" Carmen asked gently. Sophia smiled faintly. "I don't know. Part of me keeps waiting for the other shoe to drop." Carmen nudged her playfully. "You mean waiting for Alex to mess up?" Sophia let out a quiet laugh. "Maybe, or waiting for myself to run." Carmen's expression softened. "Soph, you've spent so long holding everything together on your own. It's okay to let someone else help carry the weight." Sophia exhaled slowly, watching her boys. "I want to believe he's really here. I want to believe this is real." Carmen bumped her shoulder. "Then let him show you." That evening, Alex showed up at Sophia's door, flowers in hand, an awkward but hopeful smile on his face. "Hey," he murmured when she opened the door. Sophia leaned against the frame, crossing her arms with a teasing smile. "Flowers? Trying to butter me up?" "Maybe," Alex said sheepishly. "But mostly I just wanted to say thank you for giving me this chance." Sophia's heart softened, her teasing expression fading. "Alex, I'm not looking for grand gestures. I just need you to show up." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I'm here, Sophia, and I'm not going anywhere." She looked up at him, her chest tight, her eyes shimmering. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's see where this goes." For the first time, they allowed themselves to stand in the fragile, hopeful space between them, not defined by past mistakes, not rushing toward a perfect future, but rooted in the messy, imperfect, beautiful present. Alex reached out carefully, brushing a hand along her cheek, his thumb catching a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. "We're going to figure this out," he murmured. "One step at a time." Sophia let out a shaky laugh, leaning into his touch. "One step at a time." Outside, the boys shouted and tumbled over each other, filling the evening air with their wild, joyful noise. And inside, Alex and Sophia stood together, ready to face the unknown, one careful, courageous step at a time. The following week arrived like a storm. Headlines splashed across business pages. Alex Grant walks away from Sinclair merger. Grant Tech faces investor revolt. Billionaire heir chooses family over fortune. Alex sat at his desk, the sunlight streaming through his penthouse windows. The sleek office felt different now. Less like a throne, more like a room, just a room. His phone buzzed relentlessly, but he let the calls roll to voicemail. He was waiting for one call, Sophia's. Mark entered, shaking his head with a half-smile. "You're officially the most scandalous man in Manhattan." Alex gave a dry laugh. "That's saying something." Mark sobered. "Are you sure about this, Alex? There's still time to salvage parts of the deal. Grace's family is furious, but if you step back publicly—" Alex shook his head, his jaw set. "No, I'm done stepping back. I'm stepping towards something better." Mark studied him a long moment, then gave a small, respectful nod. "Then I'm with you." Across the city, Sophia sat at the kitchen table, nervously twisting her fingers as Carmen set down 2 mugs of tea. "He's blowing up his entire world for you, Soph," Carmen murmured. "How does that feel?" "Terrifying," Sophia admitted softly. "But also, like maybe this is the first time he's doing something real." Carmen squeezed her hand. "Then meet him there. Not in the past. Not in the mistakes. Meet him in the now." That evening, Alex stood at Sophia's door, heart pounding. He had been in boardrooms, on stages, at galas, but nothing made him sweat like this. When Sophia opened the door, she smiled gently. "Hey." "Hey," Alex murmured. He glanced past her, hearing the boys' laughter inside. "Can we talk?" She stepped outside onto the small stoop, folding her arms. "What's on your mind?" Alex drew a slow breath. "I walked away from the deal. From the Sinclair merger. From the board's demands." Sophia's brow furrowed. "Alex, I didn't ask you to do that." "I know," he said quietly. "But I needed to. For myself. For us. I've been running after power my whole life, and for what? To sit in a cold penthouse alone thinking I won?" Her eyes softened. "Alex." "I want to build something new," he continued. "Not just companies, a family, a life. With you, with the boys. I want to be more than the man I was. I want to be the man they need. The man you deserve." Sophia let out a shaky breath, her heart pounding. "That's a big promise." Alex smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Then let me earn it." She studied him a long moment. This man she had once loved, who had broken her heart, who had fought his way back not with wealth or power, but with humility and determination. Finally, she reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "Okay," she whispered. "Let's build something new. Together." Inside, the boys peeked through the window, giggling and whispering. "Is he kissing her?" Julian asked with wide eyes. "No, dummy," Luis grinned. "But he's going to." Mateo smiled softly. "Mom looks happy." Raphael, quiet as always, just watched with a small, knowing grin. Outside, Alex leaned down, resting his forehead against Sophia's. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" she whispered back. "For giving me a second chance." She smiled, brushing a hand along his cheek. "We're all getting a second chance, Alex. Let's not waste it." And under the soft glow of the city lights, they stood together, 2 people who had walked through heartbreak and distance and misunderstanding, now ready to step into something new, a future they would build, not on wealth or power, but on love. A few weeks later, Alex stood in his once sterile penthouse, watching as chaos unfolded around him. Toys scattered across the living room, crayon drawings taped to the once flawless glass walls, small sneakers lined up, somewhat messily, by the door. And in the middle of it all, Luis and Mateo argued over a board game, while Julian and Raphael played with blocks on the floor. Alex smiled to himself, shaking his head. This was no longer the kingdom of a lonely billionaire. It was the lively, noisy, wonderful mess of a family. Sophia stepped out of the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel, giving him a look that was half amused, half exasperated. "You sure you're okay with all this chaos?" He crossed the room and kissed her softly on the forehead. "It's the best kind of chaos I've ever known." She leaned into him with a small laugh. "You say that now. Wait until Julian smuggles a frog into the bathroom again." "He did what?" Sophia giggled, pulling away to check on the kids. Alex watched her, his chest tightening with a familiar, beautiful ache. How had he gone so long without this? without them. Later that evening, as the boys drifted to sleep and the apartment finally quieted, Alex and Sophia sat on the balcony, a soft breeze tugging at her hair. "I never imagined this life," Alex admitted quietly, staring out over the city. "I thought I needed deals, headlines, mergers to prove my worth. But sitting here, with you, with them, I feel like I finally found something real." Sophia rested her head on his shoulder. "You're not the same man you were 10 years ago, Alex." "I know," he murmured, "and thank God for that." She turned slightly, searching his face. "But are you ready for the long haul?" "The school runs, the sleepless nights, the scraped knees, and science projects." Alex smiled softly, brushing her hair back. "I may not know everything yet, but I know this. I want to learn. I want to be here for every moment." Sophia exhaled, her heart swelling. "You're going to break my heart if you ever walk away again, Alex." He caught her face gently in his hands, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I'm not walking away. Not this time. Not ever." Their kiss was slow, tender, a quiet promise between two people who had earned this second chance. The next morning, Alex stood by the kitchen counter, flipping pancakes awkwardly, while the boys watched him, wide-eyed. "Are you sure you know how to do that, Dad?" Luis asked, skepticism clear. "Hey, I'm learning," Alex said, laughing as he nearly flipped one onto the floor. Sophia leaned against the doorway, watching the scene with a soft smile. Carmen appeared beside her, smirking. "Looks like he's adjusting." "He's trying," Sophia murmured, her heart full. "And you?" Carmen asked gently. "Are you letting yourself be happy?" Sophia swallowed, blinking back sudden emotion. "I'm working on it." Carmen slipped an arm around her shoulders. "You deserve it, Soph. You always have." As the boys burst into laughter, and Alex surrendered to their pancake chaos, Sophia stepped into the kitchen, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "You're doing just fine," she whispered against his back. He turned, smiling down at her. "That's all I want to do." And in that messy, golden-lit kitchen, surrounded by laughter and love, Alex and Sophia began weaving the life they had both waited so long to find. Not perfect, not polished, but beautifully, deeply real. A year later, Alex stood on the sidelines of a Little League soccer field in Central Park. His tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, and shoes dusted with grass. The late afternoon sun bathed the scene in a warm glow as Luis chased the ball across the field. Mateo called out strategy. Julian clapped for everyone, and Rafael crouched in goal with fierce concentration. Alex glanced to his side, where Sophia sat on a picnic blanket laughing softly with Carmen. His heart tightened in that way he'd come to recognize. The ache of gratitude, of knowing he had almost lost all this. A year ago, he was a man defined by his wealth, his empire, his control. But now, as he watched his sons, as he saw Sophia's easy smile, as he felt the tug of ordinary, beautiful life, he realized he was finally defined by something more. Family, love, growth. The media had moved on. The headlines had faded. Investors who doubted him had been replaced by new ones who believed in his vision for a more balanced, ethical company. Grace had moved on too, finding her own path apart from the families who had tried to orchestrate their lives. Alex had rebuilt, not just his business, but himself. Sophia rose from the blanket and walked over, slipping her hand into his. "You look happy." He smiled, squeezing her fingers. "I am." She leaned against him, her voice soft. "A year ago, I never thought we'd stand here like this." He turned to her, brushing her hair back, his voice rough with emotion. "Neither did I. I thought success was power, control, reputation. I thought love was a weakness." Sophia smiled gently. "And now?" He kissed her forehead softly. "Now I know love is the only thing that ever made me strong." On the field, Luis scored a goal and pumped his fists in the air, grinning wildly. Rafael leapt up and high-fived his brothers, while Mateo ran to the sidelines to report every little detail to Alex, who knelt down, listening intently. Julian ran up, holding his beloved stuffed bear, slipping his small hand into Alex's. "Did you see, Daddy? We're winning." Alex scooped him up, laughing. "I saw, champ. You're amazing." Sophia watched them, her heart swelling, her past grief and doubt softening into something beautiful and whole. That evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, Alex and Sophia sat on the balcony of their now shared home, the boys asleep inside. The city shimmered below them, no longer a symbol of ambition or conquest, but simply the backdrop to their shared life. "Remember when you tried to impress me by inviting me to your wedding?" Sophia teased lightly. Alex groaned with a laugh. "Don't remind me. You were such an idiot back then." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. He kissed the top of her head. "Yeah. But I was an idiot who finally learned." She lifted her head, eyes shining. "You really did." They sat in silence for a long moment, watching the stars blink into the darkening sky. Finally, Alex spoke, his voice low. "You saved me, Sophia. Not just by coming back into my life, but by making me face what I had been running from for years." She wrapped her arms around him, pressing close. "We saved each other, Alex. And we saved them." He held her tightly, closing his eyes, letting himself feel the depth of it, the mistakes, the regrets, the hard-won forgiveness, the joy, the promise of tomorrow. The next day, as the family gathered for breakfast, the boys tumbled around the kitchen, laughter filling the air. Alex poured coffee for Sophia, watching her bustle between making pancakes and managing the chaos. He reached for her waist, pulling her gently into a quick hug amid the noise. "I love you," he murmured. She turned, smiling softly. "I love you too." And in that moment, in the messy, imperfect, beautiful heart of their home, Alex knew he had finally found what all the wealth in the world could never buy. A life of purpose, of connection, of love that held through every storm. Together, they had built something real, something lasting. And this time they weren't letting go.